Hello, everyone, and welcome to this important episode of Ignition Time. We've had some key behind the scenes insight into the infrastructure negotiations and the negotiating style of the President of the United States and what the Republican senators on the other side of the aisle are actually perceiving. In a very interesting interview featuring the Republican senator from Utah, Mitt Romney, who, by the way, has been one of the lead negotiators along with Senator Shelley Moore Capito, the Republican senator from West Virginia, which, by the way, also happens to be the same state from where we have the conservative senator, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin. Now, what Mitt Romney, the senator from Utah, said is this: President Biden is a man of honor. I do trust the president, and I take the president at his word. Let's take a look at some important comments from Mitt Romney, where he says, I take the president at his word. The other agenda, in other words, what the Democrats wish to pass through reconciliation, the liberal agenda, the progressive agenda of individuals like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat from New York, like Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent from Vermont, this progressive agenda which the Democrats are going to try and pass through a separate reconciliation bill. He said the other agenda was never linked to the infrastructure effort, and he said Republicans will not support trillions of dollars in new infrastructure spending. Important comments from Mitt Romney, the Republican senator from Utah. Let's roll the tape and hear from Romney, where he refers to the president as a man of honor and he talks about, I quote, the other agenda. Let's roll the tape and watch.
Well, I do take the president at his word, and over the weeks and weeks of negotiations with Democrats and with the White House on an infrastructure bill, the president's other agenda was never linked to the infrastructure effort. We came to an agreement on the infrastructure effort in a way that I think is really impressive. As you know, it is true infrastructure. Bridges, roads, rail, electric utility support, and so forth, and without raising taxes. And so this is a bill which stands on its own. I am totally confident the president will sign it if it comes to his desk. The real challenge is whether the Democrats can get their act together and get it on his desk. And I think the battle that's going on is not with Republicans. Republicans are going to support true infrastructure that doesn't raise taxes. But Democrats want to do a lot of other things, and I think they're the ones that are having a hard time deciding how to proceed.
Take a listen to what President Biden said about his faith in you and in this agreement on Thursday.
Mitt Romney's never broken his word to me. So the people I was with today are people that I trust. I don't agree with them on a lot of things, but I trust them when they say, this is a deal, we'll stick to the deal.
So you just heard the president say he trusts you. Based on the whiplash over the last few days, do you trust the president?
I do trust the president, and he made very clear in the much larger statement that came out over the weekend, carefully crafted and thought through piece by piece, that if the infrastructure bill reaches his desk and it comes alone, he will sign it. At the same time, I recognize that he and his Democrat colleagues want more than that. They want other legislation as well. And we Republicans are saying absolutely no. We will not support a bill which is to be passed with a massive tax increase and at the same time trillions of dollars in new spending. That is not something we will support. But fixing the infrastructure in our country, fixing our airports and our roads and bridges, transit system, rail, those are the kinds of things we will support. Don't raise the taxes, fix infrastructure, we can get the job done.
Now, in another very interesting segment, Romney repeats that he believes that the president is a man of honor, but he does warn, he does caution that the president will make a big mistake by raising taxes. By the way, taxes were lowered by the Republicans in 2017, and then he goes on to say Republicans will not support a multi-trillion-dollar spending spree. He also goes on to emphasize the definition of traditional infrastructure, and he believes that we should be focusing on traditional infrastructure. Let's take a look at what Mitt Romney says, and I want you to let me know in the comment section below whether you agree or disagree with his comments about the Republicans not supporting, I quote, a multi-trillion-dollar spending spree, and also his warning about the president about to make a big mistake if he ends up raising taxes, which, by the way, I don't think is going to happen because it seems like the president and the White House have actually backed away from that. But let's roll the tape and hear from Mitt Romney, the Republican senator from Utah. Let's watch.
And I do take the president at his word. As he indicated, I don't agree with the president on a lot of policy fronts. I think he's making a big mistake by dramatically raising taxes. That's his ambition, of course, and by adding huge spending on social programs. I think that's a mistake for the country. But do I take him at his word? And do I think he's a man of honor? Absolutely.
How close did President Biden come here to blowing up this deal, do you think?
Well, had it not been clarified, and had he not made it clear that these are two different measures, that the infrastructure bill stands on its own, and that his other agenda items, those things stand their own as well. Had he not made that clear, why I think it would have been very, very hard for Republicans to say, yeah, we support this. We're not going to sign up for a multi-trillion-dollar spending spree. We're not going to sign up for dramatic increases in taxes on the American economy and on the employers that put Americans back to work. We simply think that's wrong. There won't be a single Republican that votes for the kind of massive increase that the president's fighting for. And there was no discussion during our negotiations whatsoever of tying those things together. That would have not been something that would have possibly been able to proceed with Republican support.
Let's talk about the infrastructure deal. If you listen to experts, they say that it's still not enough. The American Society of Civil Engineers says the United States has a backlog of nearly $800 billion in road and bridge repair needs. This plan has less than $600 billion in new spending total, including water, broadband, and more. Why not at least meet the demand that engineers and other experts are calling for?
Well, I must admit that I do pay a lot of attention to the engineers, but of course they're paid based upon how much we spend in their arena. And I can tell you that as we looked at each of the elements that is supported in the infrastructure plan, the committees of record that oversee each of those areas, we took their legislation, which had been passed on a bipartisan basis, we put it into the bill that was done on a combined basis, and it added up to, as you know, $579 billion on top of the $300+ billion we'll spend as a base load over the next 5 years. So it's a 5-year program. And there's a point at which you can't spend any more, where there aren't more contractors and more steel and concrete and so forth to be able to actually spend at a higher level than that. And if more needs to be done as we go along, why, of course, there's always the occasion for the next Congress to be able to add spending if that's needed. But this is a very robust program. And it deals, I would note, with a whole host of areas which relate to improving our physical infrastructure and also recognizing that the climate is changing. And we face some threats to our systems that suggest, one, we need more resiliency to prevent wildfires and to prevent roads from, if you will, going underwater. And at the same time, we need to develop new technologies in hydrogen and electric, as well as nuclear, if we're going to deal with the coming reality.
In the final segment, Mitt Romney emphasizes that the American people want traditional infrastructure done, and they want it done ASAP. They want it done in July. He does not want a big spending spree from the Democrats. So let's hear from Mitt Romney talking about the importance of infrastructure, talking about what the American people need. And in a very interesting part of this segment, he essentially says that Democrats need to get their act together because there are different factions in the Democratic Party. There are the liberals and there are the ones who are most centrist. So he says, hey, the Democrats need to come to a conclusion and need to come to an agreement about what they want, because the Democrats have the liberals like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Bernie Sanders. And then they have the conservatives like Senator Joe Manchin, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, and Senator Kristen Sinema, the Democrat from Arizona. So he says, hey, the Republicans are consistent in their approach, but the Democrats are not. Let's roll the tape and hear from Mitt Romney.
Whether or not this legislation comes to the floor is up to Chuck Schumer, and to a degree, of course, Nancy Pelosi in the House. And they'll make that decision. And if they allow this bill to come to the floor, it will surely be supported by the White House and by a number of Democrats, as well as by Republicans. It'll get passed and the president will sign it. But if they say, no, we're not going to let it come to the floor unless we get trillions of dollars of other spending and a huge tax increase, why, they're going to face some real challenges. So the real, I think, challenge right now is among the Democrats. What are they going to do? Because I don't know that they're all in line for a big tax increase. I don't think the American people want to see that. What the American people want to see is exactly what America needs. Fix the infrastructure. It's crumbling, in many cases dangerous. Fix the infrastructure, move ahead, get that done. and take the other agenda and work on it as you will. But let's get the infrastructure done, and let's do it in July.
Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please also click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. A lot of time, effort goes into all of these videos. All I ask from you in return is please click the like button. Please subscribe. Please enable notifications. We really appreciate you being a viewer and a subscriber. We work hard on this channel every single day to bring you the latest news as it pertains to the country, the economy, as well as our money. Thank you so much for watching. Please follow us on Twitter. This is our Twitter feed right here. And our Twitter handle is ignition_time. You'll get the latest breaking news on Twitter. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.